All right, so here I've taken my sketch and I've used levels to really make it just pure black and white. And if you stack all of these levels, triangles on top of each other, you get to just pretty much solid black and white. And then the only other thing you need to do to kind of clean up your sketch, whether it's inked or pencil, is to get rid of the saturation, the color. So I go to Image, Saturation, take it down to 0. Okay. And now this is going to give me a much better trace in Illustrator. But there's another way I like to do it. And if there's blatant places that need to be fixed, you can always just erase them out. Using a hard eraser at 100% opacity, you can really clean it up pretty well. Especially if it's a high resolution scan. But don't spend a ton of time doing this because it's kind of a wasted effort. Because it's much better to clean it up in Illustrator. You'll get much better results. But anything that's just really glaringly obvious, like smudges on the paper, you can get rid of before you move it over. A lot of these next two projects are about working between Illustrator and Photoshop. Okay, so once it's clean, I want to now get rid of the white behind it. So I'm going to do that by selecting all the whites, by using the magic wand with a tolerance that's pretty high. Let's do 32, kind of the default, not contiguous. So it's going to select all the whites. Then I'm going to say select inverse, anything that's not white. And I'm going to duplicate it, Command J. So now it's on a flat background. This is just from my pencil sketch, but now it is solid black on a blank background. And then I'm going to save that as a PNG. So as a flattened image that still supports transparency. And I usually call these tests because they're not a finished image at all. I'm going to put it onto the desktop. Okay, now this is the image I'll bring into Illustrator and try to have Illustrator trace it. It's going to have much higher success than just the pencils alone. But Illustrator can still mess things up sometimes. So I'll show you yet another way we can try to vectorize it before bringing it into Illustrator. So what do? I find that test PNG, I open it with Illustrator. It opens. The difference is because it's a PNG, it doesn't have a background white behind it. So now it's just a single color. And I'm going to image trace it. And I'll try silhouettes, though that might cut off some of the things that are solid. And we look close. And wow, that's pretty clean. I actually really love what it's done to the hair. So that might be a good place to start. Now what if it looks a little too thick? Well, I can try the threshold being a little different. Letting a little bit more through. So silhouette's kind of our best option when we're taking just clean black line work. And Illustrator's gotten a lot better at this over the years. But look at that. This is just from a pencil sketch. Look how strong and simplified those shapes are. Yes, there's little bumps, but I'll show you how to fix those. But it's way easier than trying to erase all this out by hand. Okay, so once you like the preview, I think that's pretty strong. Then I say expand, and it turns it all into vectors. If you don't hit expand, it will never give you all the paths. It'll just keep it as one image. And the other advantage is, of course, other than using black and white logo, which I used before, that brought in all the white shapes too that I would have to delete. This doesn't fill in the background. So silhouette's the trace we want to be able to use, and we can use the threshold on it to just make it exactly what we want. Okay, now how do I clean it up in Illustrator? Well, this is what I love to do. This is where Illustrator is just a beautiful tool. The first thing I'll do is make a copy. So I'll select all that's on that layer, do Command C or Edit, copy, go to a new layer and paste in place. Edit, paste in place. Because it's a new layer, it's going to show up as a different color. So this is the red layer. And then I'm going to turn off and lock that bottom layer. So I know I can't, even if I screw it up here, I can always go back to that original. And now I'm going to look for those places. I'm going to zoom in and kind of smooth it out. And it couldn't be easier. I'm going to use the pencil tool. And then I'm going to hit Command to change it to the small selection tool. So if I want to smooth out this line on this strap, I just use the small selection tool by holding down Command, and then I'm just going to redraw that line and have it smooth itself out with the pencil tool. Takes a steady hand, sure, but if you double click on the pencil, you can set the accuracy and how smooth you want it to be. So maybe I even want it a little bit smoother. So I'll put it to there. And that makes it so I can even be a little bit more jittery, and it's still going to smooth within a certain number of pixels. And it means pixels of screen resolution. Now, in order to redraw the edge, you have to start and stop on the existing path. So for instance here, if I start up here and then drag onto the path, it creates a new path. But if I start on the path and drag through it and end on it, it will recut that line. And because I have the simplify up, it's going to always try to reduce the number of anchor points required. But make sure it makes sense for what you're doing. So right here, you can just redraw that arrow nice and smooth. Okay, then this is the trickier thing. Look what just happened. What the heck? I just redrew one line and that happened. So why did that happen? Because you don't want that, right? And this is why. When you have Illustrator put the image together, sometimes it sees something that's not supposed to be connected and it connects it, like her hair and this arrow. And if I try to just redraw that path, if I redraw it like this and disconnect it from the arrow, it will delete the arrow. So instead, I have to use the eraser tool, and I have to break that connection. Now, the eraser tool is an interesting tool in Photoshop, or in Illustrator rather. It's made to be about the size of a pencil eraser, but that dimension is locked in. So if this is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, this is locked in. So if I want to be able to erase more delicately, this is something I can do. I can take the whole image with the large selection tool, and I can make it a whole lot bigger by holding down Shift and scaling it up. And this is what I do when I edit. Okay, so nice and big. Now the eraser tool is very tiny. And now I can get in and I can actually shape the images like this and cut them off from each other. The problem is it can be hard to see when your artboard doesn't fit. So let me show you how to make your artboard fit. Right here underneath your layers are your artboards. If you double click on that, you'll get the artboard settings. And you can say that you want it to be any of these preset sizes. And you should be able to say that you want it to fit your image as well. Let me see. There we go. Yeah. So right at the top. So fit to the artwork bounds. And by doing that, you now have an artboard that's a lot bigger. And then I might take my image and I'll just shrink it down a little bit so I can have white all the way around it once I'm done erasing. But are there any other places where I have connections I don't want? No, not really. So that's where the eraser tool comes in. Okay, so now I'm just going to use the pencil tool And I'm going to go around and clean it up. So let me select the whole thing again. Remember, this is all on a different layer than the original one I brought in, because sometimes you'll end up erasing something with your pencil tool that you don't realize. I'm just going to shrink it within this new larger artboard. And even though it's a whole lot bigger, it doesn't have any more or less anchor points than it did before. Just this gives me a lot of opportunity to fine tune it. Now what the eraser tool does is it will redraw even if you don't have it selected. It will kind of erase out the edge, so it's a nice way of smoothing as well. But sometimes it creates a lot of anchor points you don't want. So I prefer the pencil tool. Select it with the small selection tool first, and then just redraw very smoothly. This is digital inking. So you have to have a very confident line, and it takes practice. Now there's another tool with the pencil tool, and if you hold down Option, you'll get to it. It's right underneath it. It's called the Smooth tool. Used to be Option on earlier versions. I'm not sure what it is now. Shift? No. Let's see. But the Smooth tool works in a similar way to just refining with the pencil tool. But you just kind of draw over it, and it will simplify your anchor points for you. So if something looks just strangely bumpy, like the top of that finger, I can just use the Smooth tool here, which is right underneath the pencil, and take it out. Like I said, that used to be Option when you clicked on it. You could be on the pencil tool and click Option and you get the Smooth tool. Now with Creative Cloud, you get a straight line pencil tool. So let's see if we can find a use for that. So usually I just use the regular pencil tool. I try to draw it pretty straight, and then I can connect. But let's see, maybe the straight line pencil tool will make this easier. If I hold down Option, yes, then it will only let me do a straight line. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to try to turn this wavy path into a straight path. So I start drawing, hold down Option. I can just pick the whole straight I want. So I can see the advantage of that new tool. Very nice. Now I still want this to have kind of a retro hand-done quality, so I'm not going to turn everything into straights. But that does remind me of some other things we can do to clean up the image that we've brought in. So I'm going to save this. There's little dips and stuff I can fix in the hair. So this is kind of a labor of love going through and between your Smooth tool and your pencil tool, cleaning all this up. So it just looks kind of effortless. And so much easier to do with a tablet than with a mouse. I'm sure there is a shortcut that's replaced it that allows you to do the Smooth tool from the pencil tool, but since they've changed it, I don't know it right now. But I'll just kind of work between the two. Now I can't use the Smooth tool to change anything's direction, but if I just need to kind of clean it up a little bit, that works. But it only works in a specified area, wherever I kind of draw. So what if I want just the whole image to be smoothed out? Well, then we get into kind of the object modifiers. And to do that, I'm going to make a copy because I like where this is going.